Hilchos Maachalos Asuros Perek Achad Asar. The laws of forbidden foods, chapter 11. For the next 3 days, we're going to be going into the topic that's called Yayin Nesach. Yayin Nesach literally means wine that was poured. Nesach means pouring. But it's a specific reference to wine that was used to serve idols. Avodah Zarah. Like we do in the Bet HaMikdash every day, Nisuch HaYayin. They used to pour wine together with sacrifices to the Mizbeach. So the idol worshippers did a similar thing. And if wine is poured to an idol, it becomes forbidden.
Would you say lahavdil?
Yeah, I would say lahavdil. Lahavdil between kodesh lechol. To separate between holiness and, yes, of course. So if wine was poured to an idol, it becomes forbidden. Together with that is going to emerge another set of laws that relates to it, which is that any wine connected to a Gentile, because there's a chashash, because there's a suspicion that it's related to idol worship, so it also becomes forbidden. And this is very common today also, if you have wine that's not pasteurized, not mevushal, so we're stringent about it even today. But if a non-Jew handles the wine, it becomes forbidden. And so we're going to talk about this in detail today, tomorrow, and the next day as well.
If the bottle is open, but if the bottle
right.
is closed.
So those rules are, exactly, we're going to discuss all those rules in the next 3 days. Just want to mention that today is Rabbi Gordon's yahrzeit. Rabbi Josh Gordon, the head shliach of the Valley, he started Chabad of the Valley in 1973. He passed away 8 years ago, and because of him, we're here today. So just dedicate this class to his memory. Okay? Let's begin. Halacha Aleph, Yayin shenisnasech la'avedas kechavim. If wine was actually poured, that means it was actually used as a libation to idol worship, asur bahana, it becomes not only forbidden to eat, but also forbidden to have any benefit from it. If you drink even the slightest amount from it, you get biblical lashes. Similarly, if you eat anything that was sacrificed to an idol, not just wine, but anything that was sacrificed, meat or fruit, even water or salt, if you eat any of it, the smallest amount, not an olive size. Usually you have to have an olive size. Here, even the tiniest amount, you get lashes. Shenemar, how do we know? So the Rambam is going to bring here two sources. First, he's going to bring a source that wine is like anything else that you sacrifice to an idol. Shenemar, it says in the portion of Ha'azinu is considered to be a song, but it's also a tochacha. It's a rebuke of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people. And so in the end, he foresees a time when the Jews are going to be in trouble. And Hashem is going to, so to speak, poke fun and say, hey, where are all the idols that you served? Let them help you. Asher chelev zevachema yochelu, that they ate the fats of your sacrifices. Yishtu yein nesicham, they drank the wine of your libations. Yakumu v'geimer. So here's the full verse. Yakumu v'yazruchem, let them get up and help you. Yihi aleichem sisra, let them be your shelter. What are you looking for me for? Where are all your idols that you served? There's another interpretation on that verse where it's actually referring to the goyim. That when Hashem is going to bring punishment upon the non-Jews, then he's going to say, poke fun at them. Where are your idols that are supposed to protect you? But the point is, what do you see here? And I'm going to follow the manuscripts of the Rambam where there's not a new halacha here. This goes directly into the next sentence. Yayin shenisnasechla kezevach shekaravla. We see here that wine that was poured to the idols is exactly like a sacrifice that was brought to them. The Torah puts together the zvachim and the nesach, the sacrifices and the wine. That's how we know that wine is forbidden, just like any sacrifice that's brought to an idol that's also forbidden. Now, how do we know that the amount is the smallest amount? Why shouldn't it be an olive size like everything else? So the Rambam continues, because this prohibition is related to the concept of idol worship, so we already saw in book number 1, way back when, Ein Leishir, everything connected to idol worship has no requisite amount. Even the smallest amount is considered to be totally impure and related to idols. Shenemar ba'avedas kechavim, for it says by idol worship, v'lo yidbak biyodcha me'uma min hacherem. Nothing of the condemned property shall stick to your hand. This is referring to what's called the Irani Dachas, the entire city that was persuaded to serve idols. We destroy the whole city. And it says, you shouldn't have any benefit from it. So this verse is now used to extrapolate to all idol worship, that any time you're dealing with avodah zarah, The smallest amount is forbidden. So here, since yayin nesech, since the wine that was poured as a libation is related to avodah zarah, even the smallest amount is prohibited. Gimel, here's where the rule gets expanded. Yayin ha'oiv dekechavim. If you have wine from a Gentile, from an idol-worshipping Gentile, and we don't know if it was actually used as a libation, in other words, was it actually offered to an idol or not, this is called stam yenam. Stam yenam literally means wine that belongs to them, their wine, non-Jewish wine, stam, with unknown status. We don't know if it was used in idol worship or not. Asur bahana kimayayin shenisnasech. The Rambam says, it's forbidden to have benefit from it, just like wine that was for sure poured to an idol. The davar zem igzeder seifrimu. This is a rabbinic decree, not biblical. Biblically, it has to actually be used in idol worship. But rabbinically, even if we don't know, as long as it belongs to a Gentile, it's also forbidden. If you drink from the wine that belongs to a Gentile with unknown status, you drink a revius. A revius is a quarter of a log. It's about 4 ounces. The sages will give you rabbinic lashes. Notice how here the amount changed. It's no longer the smallest amount because now it's not for sure idol worship. Huh? Actually, not necessarily. No. Biblical lashes can be a maximum of 39, and they have to be divisible by 3. So you can do 39, 36, 33, 30, whatever it is. Rabbinic lashes actually have no amount. They can be even worse in some ways. If the rabbis decide they want to give you lashes till you expire, they can do that. So the point is it's only rabbinic though. And therefore you have to drink more of it. Not just the smallest amount, you have to drink the proper revi'it, a quarter of a log, which is the usual amount used in the context of drinking. Halacha dalid, v'chol yayin sheyigaboy. Not only wine belonging to a Gentile is forbidden, any wine, even if it belongs to a Jew. If an idol-worshipping Gentile touches it, and tomorrow we'll define what touching means, not just touching. You have to handle it, shake it a little bit. Today we're stringent even if you look at it, but we'll discuss it tomorrow. Hareze asur. If it's touched by an idol-worshipping Gentile, it's forbidden. Shema nisech, I say, because perhaps in the course of touching it, he has poured it, so to speak, dedicated it to idol worship. Shemach sheves, ha'oived kechavim mamazales, la'avodas kechavim mamazales. By default, the thoughts of an idol-worshipping Gentile are centered on idol worship. Like I say, a Jew is always thinking about Hashem. A non-Jewish idol-worshipping Gentile is always thinking about idols. And therefore, if he just handles wine, you have to assume that in that moment he thought an idolatrous thought. Halamadata, from this you learn, sheyein Yisrael shenaga by ha'oived kechavim mamazales. Jewish wine that a non-Jewish idol-worshipping Gentile touched, dinai ki stam yenam shehu asur bahana. It's law, it's treated like stam yenam, like the wine with unknown status, and it's already become forbidden to have benefit from it. Halacha hey, oivit kechavim mamazales. Shenaga beyayin shaloi bekavana. If an idol-worshipping Gentile touched wine, but it was not intentional, v'chein tinoik oivit kechavim mamazales shenaga beyayin, and so too a child, an idol-worshipping Gentile child that touched wine. It's interesting, the definition here in the Shulchan Aruch is not a physical child. It means child in relationship to idol worship. He has to be, so to speak, immature in his service of idols. Not so educated, you understand. Asur b'shasiya or mutar bahana. In these cases, it's only forbidden to drink the wine. It's not forbidden to have benefit from it. You can sell it, make money off it, etc. Halekeach avadim. If a Jew buys a slave from an idol-worshipping Gentile, and he gives the slave a bris, a circumcision, and puts him in a mikveh as he is supposed to, as we saw in the first set of laws in this book, that when a Jew buys a slave, you have to put him through a quasi-conversion, go through the steps, give him a bris, put him in the mikveh, miyad ein menaschin. Right away. From that point on, they don't make any of the wine that they touch into idol-worshipping wine. Some put the comma after miyad. So umalu v'tavlu miyad, if they right away had a bris or circumcision and an immersion, they don't consider the wine that they touch to be idol-worshipping wine. The yayin shenagubai mutar b'shasiya, and any wine that they touch is now permitted to be drunk. Even though they haven't yet began to behave in the Jewish way, and they haven't stopped talking about idols, but the fact that they went through a bris And the mikvah already makes them somewhat Jewish, and no longer is their wine forbidden. Halacha vav b'nei hashvachos ha'oivdes kechav mazalos shenoldu b'rshus Yisrael. What if you have not a slave that you bought from the non-Jew? You already had a maidservant as a slave, and they had a baby. They had a boy. So the boy was born in the possession of the Jew. Umalu va'adayin loy tavlu. And they only had a bris, but they didn't go to the mikveh yet. Even though you could think that since they were born in Jewish possession, maybe they're more prone to Jewish values and behavior, as long as they didn't go to the mikvah, says the Rambam, hagdoilim oisrin hayayin kishayigubai. Any adults, and again, adults means in the context of idolatry, they're mature, their ideals are aligned with idol worship, they will forbid wine upon touching it. The haktanim einam oisrim, only the children, in other words, the younger ones, are not going to be forbidding the wine. But once they grow older, they must go to the mikvah in order to release them from this prohibition of the wine. So that's what I'm saying. In Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't say age. It just says it's a maturity mindset. Once they become like convinced of the truth of idol worship or whatever, the way that Shulchan Aruch says, does he praise the name of the idol worshippers already? Is he that mature in his relationship with them? Halacha Zayin, Ger Toishav. What about what's called the resident convert? The resident convert means he's a non-Jew who's accepted upon himself, V'hu shekibel alav sheva mitzvahs k'mesher b'yarnu. He accepted upon himself the 7 Noahide laws. Yenoi, his wine, asur b'shasiya, umutar bahana. It's forbidden to be drunk, but it's permitted to have benefit from it. Umiyachadin etzla yayin. We could even deposit wine in his possession, ve'ein mafkidin etzla yayin, but not for a long time. Miyachadin and mafkidin both mean deposit. One is a reference for a short time, one is a reference for a long time. So for long periods, we think he may exchange it with his own wine. That's going to be forbidden. But for a short period of time, it's okay. So too, every Gentile who doesn't actually serve idols, it's very rare for the Rambam to say this, like the Arabs. The Arabs are considered to be a monotheistic religion. Their wine is only forbidden to be drunk, but it's not forbidden to have benefit from it. I guess they used to in those days. And all the Gaonim ruled this way about Arabs, Muslims. But those Gentiles who actually serve idol worship, and in some versions of the Rambam, you actually have the word hanotzrim. The Christians who serve idols, stam yenam asur bahana. Their wine, if it's an unknown status, it's forbidden to have benefit from it because you have to assume that in their Christianity beliefs, they actually dedicated this wine to idol worship. Today there's some discussion about people that just call themselves Christians. They're just nominally Christians. They don't actually practice the faith. And in general, the whole idea of monotheism, according to some commentaries, has already pervaded all of the world. So there's less of a reason to consider them idol worshippers. Nevertheless, the decree is still in place. The decree of Gentile wine is still in place. The point is just how to categorize them. Is the Rambam categorizing all Christians as idol worshippers or not? It's a separate question. Halacha ches. Kol makom shenemar be'inyan zeh shehayayin osur. Anytime we say in these chapters about wine that the wine is forbidden, what does it mean forbidden? To what degree is it forbidden? Im haya ha'ovet kechavim mazalis shenesar hayayin biglaloi. If the Gentile, because of whom it became forbidden, was actively serving idols, forbidden means not just forbidden to drink, also forbidden to have benefit from it. But if he's not actively serving idols, when we say forbidden, forbidden just means forbidden to drink, but not forbidden to benefit. Whenever we use in halacha the word Gentile, by default, that's a reference to an idol-worshipping Gentile. By default, we can assume Gentiles serve idols. Again, today, not so simple, but in the Rambam's halachic times, for sure that's how it was. Halacha test, general rule. Ein misnasech la'avedes kechav mazoles ela yayin sharoi lahakri v'gabe hamizbeach. Because the idea of wine libations for idols is related to the Jewish custom, the Jewish mitzvah, of wine libations on the Mizbeach, so the only wine that can become forbidden is wine that could be offered on the Mizbeach. In the 8th book of the Rambam, we're going to see that there's a whole set of rules. You can't just pour any wine on the Mizbeach. It has to be kosher for the Mizbeach. So the forbidden wine has to match the permitted wine. Therefore, when the sages decreed that the regular unknown status wine of a Gentile is forbidden, and they made the decree that any wine touched by a Gentile should be forbidden to have benefit from it, they only made a decree on wine which could actually be used in libation for idol worship. Therefore, yayin mevushal shel Yisrael, boiled, what we call today pasteurized wine of a Jew, shenaga by ha'ovet kechav mazalis, touched by a Gentile, einay asur, is not forbidden, because such wine could not be used on the mizbeach, and so it cannot become poured for idol worship, and so it cannot be included in the rabbinic decree against Gentile wine. So much so it's permitted to drink this wine together with a Gentile in the same cup. Aval yayin mazuk, but diluted wine. The yayin shehischil lahachmitz ve'efshar sheishase, and wine that began to turn into vinegar, but it's still possible to drink it. Im naga by nesar, since such wine could be used on the mizbeach, so it could be used for idolatrous libation, so it could be included in the rabbinic decree, and therefore, if a non-Jew touches it, it is forbidden. Now, in the commentaries, there's two reasons why we stay away from yayin nesach. One is to safeguard us from idol worship, but one is to stop us from being familiar with non-Jews. So according to that reason, why should it be allowed to drink yayin mevushal with a Gentile? So the Kesef Mishnah explains that there's a basic rule that says, milsa de leishkicha legazru barabanan, which means uncommon phenomenons, the sages never imposed decrees on uncommon phenomenons. In those times, it was super uncommon to have pasteurized wine. So therefore, the sages said, this case is not even common, so we're not going to impose a decree upon it. Even today, when pasteurized wine has become super common, that permissibility, that leniency, stays in its place. Halacha Yud. Hoyru Gaonei Hamayrav. The Gaonim of the West ruled, She'im nis'arev b'yein Yisrael, ma'at dvash or ma'at so'er. If Jewish wine were to become mixed with a little honey, but honey here means really any sweetener, like sugar, or some kind of a yeast, a leavening agent, hoyil ve'enei ra'y lamizbeach, since sweeteners and leavening agents are forbidden to be offered on the mizbeach, we say this verse every day in Korbanot, Ki chol se'or v'chol devash, lo taktiru mimenu ishel la'Hashem. No leavening, no sweetener should be offered to Hashem. So that would make the wine forbidden to the mizbeach. Harehu kimevushal le'keshechra. That would convert its status into being like boiled or pasteurized wine, or like beer. Ve'enei misnasech, hence not allowing that wine to become used for idol worship, and therefore it wouldn't be included in the decree of the rabbis. You'll be able to drink it with a Gentile together in the same cup. Halacha Yud Aleph. We said that wine belonging to a Gentile is forbidden. When does it become forbidden? So for this we have to look at this ancient wine press. This is actually live. You can see this in Israel. They have remnants of how the wine presses used to look. And the way it used to work was as follows. You have here on the bottom was what's called the bore, the pit, the cistern. This is where the wine would collect. But the grapes would be placed onto this area here, this flat area.
And that used to be like a pool.
Huh? Yes.
Yeah.
This is called a gat, or gas, a wine press.
The gut.
Yes. And you would press the grapes in the wine press. You can see here the holes. You have a very fancy system. The holes would go right down into this little drainage here and drain in to the cistern. So you have this part is called the gas. This part is called the bur. There are other parts over here where other parts of the grapes and the wine used to collect, but this is the main two parts, the gas and the bur. Says the Rambam, when is the moment that wine becomes considered Gentile wine? Mishe yidreich v'yimashech hayayin. The moment he presses the grapes and the wine begins to flow. Afal pi shelo yarad labur. Even though it didn't go into the pit. And again, this is the pit here. Ela adayin hu bagas. Rather, it's still in the press. But there's already a flow of wine. It's already turning into a liquid. Hareza asur. In that moment, it becomes forbidden. Lefichach, therefore, ein derchin. Bagas, we cannot participate. A Jew cannot participate in the pressing of wine with an idol-worshipping Gentile in the press. Shema yiga b'yadei v'yinasech. Because maybe in the moment of pressing, the non-Jew will touch the grapes with his hands. the grapes meaning the grapes and the wine mixture, he will then, in his mind, dedicate it to idol worship. The wine will then become forbidden to have benefit from it. Even if the non-Jews' hands were tied. We're still worried about it. Same thing, we cannot buy from a Gentile a press that has already in it grapes that have already been pressed. Even if the wine is still mixed with the grape seeds and the grape peels, it didn't go down to the pit over here. Doesn't matter. Since in the moment of pressing, it becomes considered halachically wine, and at that moment already fit to be used for libations for idol worship, so we have to suspect that maybe that happened, so you can't purchase it from the guy. Now, you notice in the Rambam said he has to touch it with his hands. There's a big debate in the commentaries. Does the fact that he's touching it with his feet already give him the possibility? The literal understanding of the Rambam is that it has to do with his hands. But other commentators say, no, even with his feet. Therefore, the only way to make it permitted is if he has a mat on top of the grapes, and he's not actually touching the grapes with his feet. Yud Beis. An idol-worshipping Gentile is pressing wine, and he didn't touch it. And again, this is the same argument. Touch it with his hands, touch it with his feet. The point is, he didn't touch it. And a Jew was supervising. Like with cheese, like with milk. A Jew is watching, makes it kosher. A Jew is watching the non-Jew press the wine. He makes sure the non-Jew doesn't touch it. And the Jew is the one who collects it into the containers, into the barrels. Still, it's forbidden to be drunk. It's not forbidden to have benefit from it because the guy never had a chance to make it used for idol worship, but it's forbidden to be drunk on account of it being Gentile wine. Yud Gimel, hachaymetz, vinegar belonging to Gentiles, asur bahana, is also forbidden to have benefit from it. It's because it became wine that was used in idol worship in a Gentile's possession before it turned into vinegar. What if there was a Gentile who was crushing grapes in a barrel? So he wasn't using the proper professional press. He had a barrel of grapes and he was crushing them either with his hands, maybe with his feet. Even if there's so much wine that it's flowing over his hands, over here, we're not concerned about the issue of yayin nesech. Why? Because it's not in the proper pressing situation. What if the Gentile was eating grapes out of the baskets that were going to be brought to the press? And he left over a substantial measure of grapes, a sa'ah or 2 sa'ah of grapes, v'zarkan bagas, and he threw them in to the press. Now, as the commentaries explain it, when he was eating from these baskets, there was some wine that collects at the bottom of the baskets. So when he throws the baskets into the press, he's throwing the grapes together with some wine. Nevertheless, says the Rambam, afal pi, shahayayin, here's a very interesting word. If you look in the older Rambams, it says here migito. But you probably have the right word, is minatez. Right? Yes. Because a gimel could resemble a nun, and a vav could resemble a zayin. So in the standard prints, they have migito, which doesn't really make any sense. Yes, menatez means squirting. So eat or spattering. Afal, so that's the word we're going to read. Afal pisha hayayin menates. Al ha'anavim, even though the wine is now spattering over the grapes. In other words, when he pours the baskets in, throws the baskets of grapes inside, it's only grapes, but there's also wine coming in and spritzing all around. It doesn't convert this wine into libation wine, into idol worshipping wine, because he was focused on the grapes. Peels and seeds, or opposite. Chartzanim is seeds. Zogin is peels, belonging to idol worshipping Gentiles. Asurim kol shnei masar chodesh are forbidden for 12 months, because for 12 months they may still have moisture of wine inside them. But after 12 months, they're already dry. There's no moisture left in them. It's permitted to eat them. So too dregs, wine sediment that dried up after 12 months, it's permitted. Not even a smell of wine. Nothing is remaining of wine in them. They're literally like dust and earth. Tesvav. noidos ha'oiv dekechavim mazalis v'kankanehem, wine skins or barrels shehichnisu bohen ha'oiv dekechavim mazalis yenam, into which the Gentiles placed their wine. So like when we talk about non-kosher food, how the pot becomes forbidden because it absorbs the non-kosher food, these barrels and wineskins also are considered to absorb non-kosher wine. And therefore, asur litem l'seichan yayin, a Jew cannot put into them his own wine until either of these conditions are met. Ad sheyashnon shnei masar chaydesh, until either he lets them dry for 12 months, oy ad sheyachaziron la'ur, ad sheyisrape hazefes she'alein, oy sheyechamu, or he puts them back into the fire, he fires them up, and the pitch, the layer of tar that was usually lining these skins or barrels, becomes weak, or at least heats up. That's part of the koshering process. It would release all the absorbed non-kosher wine. Oy ad sheyitem l'seichan mayim shleisha yamim me'esh le'es, or if you pour water into these wineskins or barrels for 3 24-hour periods. And the way this works is that Rambam says, every 24 hours you have to empty the water and put in new water. So you fill it up with water, leave it for 24 hours, pour out that water, put again in more water for 24 hours, shalish pa'amim bishleisha sayamim, 3 times throughout the 3 days. So 72 hours of water inside this wineskin or barrel, 3 times changed. That's another way to kosher these containers. Bein shahayu akelim shalahem, whether the containers belong to the Gentiles originally. Bein shahayu shal Yisrael v'shalu oisan v'yichnisu b'en yeinam, whether they belong to a Jew and they were borrowed by a Gentile to use for the wine, they become non-kosher until you do one of these 3 things to kosher them. V'im nasan l'seicham yayin koydem sheyatayir oisan, if you put your own wine in there before you purify them, harei asur b'shasiya, the wine is considered to be forbidden to drink because it's considered to absorb from the non-kosher wine. Tezayin, another way to kosher these containers is umutar litin l'seichan sheichar oitzir oimurias miyad. You can put in some kind of a sharp substance, beer, fish brine, fish oil. Not sure why you do that, but if you did, since it's very powerful, chemically speaking, the ein tzarich liklum. You don't need anything afterwards. That makes the skin of the container kosher. Umutar litin hayayin l'seichan. You can pour your own kosher wine into these containers, right after you put in the brine or the fish oil, because the salt in these liquids are going to burn out any absorbed non-kosher wine. Halacha Yud Zayin. Halekeach kelim chadashim she'enam mizupasim min ha'evdek echavim u'mazalis. A Jew buys a new utensil that has not been lined with pitch. It was very common in those days, as the Talmud says in many places, to line any utensils used in the winemaking process. You lined it with tar. It made it flat, it made it less absorbent, and so it was very common. But if you bought a utensil that didn't have a lining of tar or pitch from a goy, you can pour kosher wine into it right away. In other words, you can believe what he's selling you that is new, and you don't have to worry that maybe there's been some idolatrous wine poured into it. But if they were lined with pitch or with tar, they're very dark. You can't really see how well used they were. The guy is saying that they're new, but maybe they're not. Medichan, so you have to wash them off. You have to wash them out before you put in wine. Afal pishein chadashim, even though they're new, according to the guy's word. V'chein kli shenasnu b'yayin nesach. V'ein machnisa lekiyum. So too, if there's a utensil belonging to a non-Jew, into which he put wine that is actually idolatrous, but he never intended for it to be there for a long time. The utensil that he draws wine with from here, from the pit. Oy hamashpech, or a funnel. These utensils are not used for wine for extended periods of time. All the Jew has to do when he gets hold of these utensils is simply wash it out with water, and it's enough. Yudches is an interesting phenomenon we're about to learn over here. I'm going to translate this halacha as the Kesef Mishneh explains it. Rabbi Yosef Karo. V'chein kois shel cheres sheshasa boi ha'ovet kechavim u'mazalis. If you have an earthenware utensil, in the laws of kosher, earthenware utensils are considered to be more absorbent than metal, let's say. They're much harder to kosher. According to the Rambam, it seems that if you glaze an earthenware utensil, but you don't glaze it fully, it becomes even more absorbent than a regular earthenware utensil. That's how the Rambam learns. So the first case in this halacha is talking about an earthenware utensil that was glazed improperly. If you have an earthenware cup, and again I repeat, it was glazed improperly, and an idol worshiping Gentile drank from it, you can't just drink from it, of course, straight up. What do you have to do? If you wash it out 3 times, then it becomes permitted. Because that will force out any remnants of wine that's in it. That's only if it was glazed with lead, like the potters like to do, or it was lined with tar. And again, we mean lined or glazed, not fully, not properly. But if it's regular earthenware, and it wasn't glazed at all, now it only requires to be washed out once. So the lower level is if it's plain earthenware. It's easier to become permitted. If earthenware utensils are glazed with lead, and here the Kesef Mishnah says he means fully glazed, properly glazed, totally covered, which were used in the use of idolatrous wine. So when it's glazed properly, now there's a sealant, and now it's less absorbent in most cases. If they're white, red, or black, and the commentators say the earthenware itself, the pottery, the clay itself, is white, red, or black, mutarin, then it's permitted. Because the glaze will protect it, it won't absorb. But if the color is now green or yellowish, asurin, they're forbidden because they're actually more absorbent. The commentators explain, to get the green color, the green shade, you have to use some kind of alum crystals that are mixed into the glaze, and the alum crystals actually open up the pores in the earthenware to make it even more absorbent. So even though it's fully glazed, it's going to take in the wine. If there's even a slight area where the earthenware is open and there is no glaze, whether it's white or green, it's all forbidden, because they will absorb. Says the Rambam, it seems to me, this halacha is only said if the wine was meant to be placed in these cups for a long, extended period of time. But if they weren't gathered in there for a long time, wash them out, and they're permitted, even if they're earthenware, because when a guy just pours in for a cup to drink quickly, it's not going to be absorbing that much of non-kosher wine. Halacha chaf. Gas shel even v'shel eitz. A stone or wooden wine press. This is actually on the picture, a stone. But also a wooden wine press would be the same thing. If an idol-worshipping Gentile already pressed wine in it, oy gas shel even shezipsa ha'ovet kechavim u'mazales afal pishalei darachba, or a stone wine press which was lined with tar by a non-Jew, even if he didn't actually use it for pressing wine yet. Nevertheless, as the commentators explain, part of the lining process, they would pour a little bit of wine onto the tar. So there was already some non-kosher wine in the press. A very interesting koshering process is required. Medichan b'mayim u'be'efer arba pa'amim v'doyrich b'hen. You have to wash them off with water and with ashes. You would smear the ashes onto the lined press. It was supposed to suck out any of the wine 4 times.
Is there special chemical things to ashes to cure it?
And the commentators, they say here that the ashes would suck out the wine. That's all. Why it's 4 times, I don't know. Usually in halacha it's like 3 times is the cutoff line, 4 times. 4 times water and ash. And then the Jew can use the press to press his own wine. If the press was still moist, makdim ha'efer lamayim. You should put the ashes before the water. If it's dry, makdim hamayim. Put the water first and then the ashes, because the water will get it moist, and then you can have the ashes to take out all the absorbed wine. Chav Aleph. Gas shel even mizupethes. Shedarach ba ha'ovet kechavim u'mazalis. It's got all the problems. It's a stone press. It was lined with tar, and it was used for an actual round of pressing grapes. Oh, I forgot. I had a picture of pressing grapes. Look at this. The guy with his toes in the grapes. You see? In the initial stage of pressing, it has everything. There's leaves, there's peels, there's branches, there's seeds. All of it goes to the other places. Anyway, so you have a press that is a stone and it's lined with pitch. Oigas shel eitz zefusa, afal pi shalei darachba. Or a wooden press that was lined with pitch, even if it wasn't actually used for pressing. Tzarich liklef es hazefes. You must peel off the pitch. In other words, in the previous halacha, it was talking about where there was no pitch on the wooden one, or even if there was pitch on the stone one, but it wasn't used. Once there's pitch on the stone one and it's used, or there's pitch on the wooden one, now it's more strict. Tzarich liklef es hazefes. You must peel off the outer layer of pitch. But if you left it to dry for 12 months, or you poured in water 3 times consecutively over 3 days, no need to peel off the pitch. We're not going to make the wine press stricter than the actual barrels. The actual barrels, as long as you leave them to dry for 12 months, will pour water and then they become kosher. So the press is no worse than that. The only reason the Talmud mentions peeling is if you want to make it become permitted right away. You don't want to wait 12 months. You don't want to wait even 72 hours. So then the way to get around this is to peel off the pitch. But you don't want to peel it off, leave it for 12 months. Many commentators argue on that. I'm going to say no. Once you have a press that was lined with pitch, it's different than barrels, and you have to leave it 12 months. You cannot get away with you have to leave it 12 months, and you have to peel it. You have to do both. Chav Beis, gas shel cheres, a earthenware press, afal pisha kalafes azefes, even if you peeled the pitch, also lidrich b'miyad, you cannot use it to press right away. Ad sheyachim ma'isa ba'esh, ad sheyirpa azefes, you must heat it with fire and weaken the tar. But if you left it for 12 months or put in water for 3 days, it's permitted, as we explained again. The commentators here argue on the Rambam, and they say no. Once you have pitch on it, you got to do both. You got to wait 12 months and peel it. Chav Gimel Mishameres Shal Yayin Shal Evik Chav Mazalis. A strainer. Where's my strainer? I can't find it. Anyway, the strainer of wine belonging to an idol worshipping Gentile. Imaisa Shal Seyar Medicho Mishamer. But if it was made out of hair, you just wash it off, and you can use it to strain kosher wine, because hair doesn't absorb wine. But if it was wool, again, you use that 4-time procedure of water and ashes. Leave it to dry, and then you can strain with it. If it was made out of flax or linen, you must leave it for 12 months, because it takes more time to get all the wine out.
Shesh is linen?
Yeah. Like pishtan, it's a Torah word for linen. If they have knots in the strainer, matiran, you must untie them. Same thing of utensils made out of reeds or palm bast. Any other utensils like wicker baskets that are used to shred grapes. If they were sewn together with rope, madichan, you wash them off. But if they were interlinked with each other, very tangled, and it's all knotted up, you must use the water and ash procedure 4 times, and then dry them and use them. But if they were tied together with linen, you must leave them for 12 months. It takes longer to get the wine out. Again, if there's knots, untie the knots. Till now, we discussed the actual press. What about the utensils, the tools that are used in the process of pressing wine? How do we kosher them for a Jew to be able to press his own wine with them? So the Rambam says, Hadapin, v'ha'adashim, v'halulavim. Dapin is the boards. They used to line the floors over here with boards many times. Adashim are the balls of clay that they used to use, they say over here, to actually crush the grapes. Lulavin are the palm branches that were used like brooms. They would sweep up the grapes and the peels at the end of the process. Medichan, all you have to do is wash them off from the non-kosher wine, and then you can use them for the kosher wine. Ha'akalim are the restraints. Once, like restraints, they hold them together. Once you have too many grapes and they're all falling all over the place, you have to kind of bring them in with different tools. They would use bags sometimes they would use like little pieces of cloth. So the Rambam says, Shal nisarin v'shal bitzbutz, if they're made out of wood or canvas, Menagvan, simply dry them off. Shel shifa v'shel gemi, if they're made out of different grasses or reeds, miyashna shnei masar chedesh, they're more absorbent, you have to leave them to dry for 12 months. If you want to kosher them right away, you can't wait for so long. Heat them up in hot water. Or scald them with water used to cook olives. Or put them under a pipe, a gutter, where the water is dripping. Or in a stream where the current is flowing. Through 12 hours, and they're kosher. Chaf Hey says the Rambam, a general rule. Bizman shahaysa Eretz Yisrael kula Yisrael. When Israel was totally belonging to Torah observant Jews, you were allowed to buy wine from any Jewish person without worry. In diaspora, they would only buy wine from a Jew who has a reputation for being kosher. But nowadays, unfortunately, even in Israel, says the Rambam, you cannot buy wine anywhere except from a man who has a good reputation, like the other foods that we saw the other days. Like meat and like cheese, or a cut of fish that has no side on it, as we explained, they also can only be bought from a Jew that has a reputable reputation that he's trustworthy. Chavav. If you are a guest by a Jewish homeowner, anytime, any place, and he brings out to the dining room, he brings out wine or meat or cheese or fish, it's all permitted. You don't have to ask any questions, even if you don't know him. All you know is that he's Jewish, you can believe him. Of course, if he has a presumption that he's not careful, not a kosher guy, then of course, you cannot be a guest by him. If you transgressed and you were a guest by him, you cannot eat his meat or drink his wine on his own word alone, unless a kosher guy who you trust testifies that this wine or meat that he's serving you is kosher. But otherwise, if you don't have a reason to suspect him, you go to a Jewish home, eat whatever you want. He's a Jew, he's going to serve you kosher stuff.